But here's a really fun stat that I actually stumbled across earlier, just was harmlessly scrolling Twitter after the game. The Cubs' 21-0 win today over the Pirates is the third largest shutout win in the modern era of baseball, which started in 1900. It's the largest shutout victory in Cubs history. So,
well, yeah, I figured that.
Absolutely. But that's crazy. Third longest in 122 years of baseball. Third largest blowout victory. That is impressive. And again, and a shutout. And the Cubs pitched well today too, right? We're obviously giving Hendricks props. 7 innings out of him, as we mentioned. No walks too, which is awesome. Cubs as a pitching staff did not walk anybody today. But how about Sean Newcomb making his debut today? Looks good. 1 K in 1 inning of work. Nothing crazy. Again, I have the pleasure. My cousins all live in Atlanta. One of my cousin that's my age is a diehard Braves fan. So as soon as the trade happened, I asked him. I said, "What are we getting in Sean Newcomb?" And it was after we did our show, so obviously I couldn't do it in live time when you and I were talking about it. But
sure,
he even said, he was like, he's a guy that has the stuff. He's just been wildly inconsistent in his time in Atlanta. And as soon as I heard wildly inconsistent, I went, the Cubs identified him as a guy to throw in the pitch lab because he has the stuff, and they're going to try and operate and make him into something. And I am very, very excited about that, Juice, because again, we see it time and time again that the Cubs identify guys that have the stuff. They have the potential, but now they have the science behind it to help those guys tap into said potential.
Yeah, stuff is tough to teach too, right? Yes. If you're looking at, what he has that nice curveball, he has, the decent fastball with some run on it. If you're really looking at the path for him being successful in Chicago, it's throwing strikes. It's being able to get ahead of guys and finish them off with that good stuff.
Absolutely.
And it's a good start. I think that, like you said, they've identified a guy with, good stuff from the left side, something they needed. It's something that they can, kind of work with to begin this season as they figure out who is a mainstay in the bullpen. I think the biggest thing, and the biggest takeaway in this first couple weeks of the season is, a lot of places in the bullpen and spots are still up for grabs. Some have been sorted out. But I think he's a guy that you can look at and you could throw him in a certain spot and say, in a high leverage situation, hey, sink or swim, man. Because this is he's been in the majors. He's got this, he's got the stuff. He's got the makeup to be successful. Absolutely. And I'm intrigued. I'm on the other side that I'm not going to get too excited until I see consistency. Because as you said, the inconsistencies that he had in Atlanta is something that, has been well documented. And I look at the Cubs, side of the stuff, and he doesn't seem like the guy who is specifically targeted as this is the savior from the left side. Like the Cubs could easily go out with what they have in the system that they don't believe in and get a high leverage left-hander.
Yes.
If they are down the line contending.
Absolutely. But
this is a nice stopgap to figure out, to give a chance on. And like we said in the last show, we didn't give up much. Jesse Chavez was not going to carve out a significant role in this bullpen. He just wasn't.
Not with the amount of righties.
Yeah, and with the performance you're getting out of Keegan Thompson, and with the performances you're getting out of Scott Effross, and you're getting out of Robertson at the end of the game.
Yep.
There's a lot of good right-handed guys in this bullpen that Jesse Chavez was absolutely expendable at that point. So,
100%.
But it's great to see them put a good pitching game together, because it seems like a long time since they've thrown out 3 guys where you're like, man, all 3 of them were fantastic today.
But quickly going back to Newcomb, just to kind of wrap up the thoughts on him, I think why this trade is so appealing and so interesting, and you and I talked about it the other night as well. He is the only other lefty other than Daniel Norris in this pen right now, and I think that's the appeal with him. But he's also still pretty young. He's only 28 years old. He had a lot of early success as a young major league player, and then kind of faded out. And another quote from my cousin when I spoke to him, he said, a lot of it wasn't necessarily Newcomb not being able to do well. He had a 12-9 record, 160-something innings in his second year as a pitcher. Brian McCann had a lot of good things to say about Newcomb as well, which Brian McCann's a Hall of Fame catcher, so that makes me happy hearing that from a guy like him. But he was kind of pushed out in Atlanta. Soroka, Fried, you now have guys like Ian Anderson and all these young kids that the Braves have brought up through their system. It was really easy for them to push Newcomb to the bullpen. And I think that's why a lot of people forgot about who he was. It's why the Cubs trade makes a ton of sense. And something we didn't mention the other night on the other show was Jesse Chavez was with the Braves last season and actually performed very well in Atlanta. So it's kind of like hey, Chavez, go back to where you were and absolutely succeeded. I think he pitched 36 games for them, started a couple games as well. Had a 2-something ERA. Like he was really good for Atlanta last season. And then you bring in Newcomb, a guy that's a perfect, like, hey, put him in the pitch lab, see what he's got with the Cubs. And again, looks good today in his debut. He was technically available yesterday. They didn't end up needing him, but we did get to see 4 innings of Keegan Thompson, which was cool and tough because that dude just continues to fucking shove.